The FBI knocked on a man's door in Texas. They had a warrant. They searched his home. They found a gun, some marijuana, and a small amount of cocaine. That one search could now trigger a Supreme Court ruling that reshapes your Second Amendment rights forever. Quick question before we go any further. Are you subscribed to this channel? Because what I'm about to share with you could be the most important gun law update you hear all year. The Supreme Court is deciding a case right now that touches two things at once: the limits of home searches and your right to keep a firearm. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss an update like this again. Okay, let's get into it. The case is called United States versus Hemani, and even if you've never heard that name before, trust me, you need to know it. This case started with a man named Ali Daniel Hemani. The FBI got a warrant and searched his home. Inside, agents found a 9mm pistol, about 60 grams of marijuana, and a small amount of cocaine. The government said Hemani was a habitual marijuana user. Because of that, they charged him under a federal law called 18 U.S.C. 922G3. That law says any person who is an unlawful user of or addicted to a controlled substance cannot legally possess a firearm. Hemani said that law was unconstitutional. He said it violated his Second Amendment rights. And here's the crazy part. A federal appeals court agreed with him. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit threw out the charge. They ruled that the government couldn't prove that Hemani posed a real danger at the time he had the gun. He wasn't impaired. He wasn't intoxicated. He just also happened to use marijuana. The court said that simply using a drug, without being high or dangerous at that specific moment, wasn't enough to strip someone of their gun rights under the Second Amendment. Now, the government went to the Supreme Court and said, hold on, this ruling is wrong. The Supreme Court accepted the case in October 2025. Oral arguments happened on March 2nd, 2026, and the final decision is expected by late June 2026. What happens in that decision will affect millions of gun owners across this country, and that includes you. Here's what you need to understand about why this case is so huge. It's not just about marijuana. It's about the power the government has to permanently take away your right to own a firearm. Right now, federal law can strip your gun rights if you are an unlawful user of any controlled substance. That's not just hard drugs. In states where marijuana is still illegal under federal law, which is all of them, by the way, any regular marijuana user technically falls under this ban. We're talking about tens of millions of Americans who could be affected by this. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, my next video is going to cover the 5 words you should never say when a police officer asks if you're carrying a gun. That one could save you from losing your carry permit on the spot. Subscribe right now so you're the first to see it when it drops. Now, here's the part that connects directly to your home. Remember how this case started. With a search warrant. The FBI went into Hemani's house. That search is what started everything. And this is where the home search side of this case matters to you directly. Think about it this way. If the Supreme Court rules that the government can enforce this drug, user gun ban broadly, that means law enforcement has a very strong motivation to search homes when they suspect someone is both a drug user and a gun owner. A warrant based on suspected drug use could lead directly to your firearms being seized. Not because you did anything violent, not because you threatened anyone, simply because you used a substance the federal government considers illegal. Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Imagine you live in a state where recreational marijuana is completely legal under state law. You use it occasionally on weekends. You also legally own a firearm and keep it in your home for protection. Under the current federal law, 922G3, if the government had reason to believe you used marijuana regularly, that could be enough for a warrant. They could search your home. They could find your firearm. And under the law, as it currently stands, you could face federal charges even though you never used your gun to hurt anyone and never had any intent to. That's not a fantasy scenario. That's exactly what happened to Hemani. And it could happen to any gun owner in America who also uses marijuana, even legally under their state's laws. Now let's talk about the legal standard behind all of this, because this is where it gets really interesting. In 2022, the Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling called Bruen. That ruling changed the entire game for gun laws in America. It said that any law restricting your Second Amendment rights has to be consistent with America's historical tradition of firearm regulation. In other words, if you can't find a similar law from the founding era of this country, the modern law might not be constitutional. Now, a quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney for your specific situation. What I'm sharing here is to help you understand what's happening in the courts and why it matters to you as a gun owner. So when Hemani's case went to the Fifth Circuit, the court looked at history, and they couldn't find strong historical evidence that the founders believed someone who uses intoxicants should be permanently stripped of their gun rights. That's a powerful legal argument, and now the Supreme Court has to decide whether that argument holds up nationwide. Here's what most people get wrong about this case. They think it's only about drug users. It's not. The real question is how broadly the government can use personal behavior that doesn't directly involve violence, to take away your constitutional rights. If the court sides with the government and says, yes, you can ban drug users from owning guns with no further proof of danger, then that sets a precedent, and precedents can expand. Today it's drug users. Tomorrow it could be a broader category of behavior someone decides is dangerous. That's the part nobody's really talking about. Hey, 73% of people watching this right now are not subscribed to this channel. That means nearly 3 out of 4 of you are at risk of missing updates like this one. Join the community of gun owners who get this information first. Hit that subscribe button right now. Don't be the person who finds out about a law change after it's already affected you. Now, let's talk about what the Supreme Court could actually decide. There are a few likely outcomes here. First, the court could rule broadly in favor of the government. That would mean 922G, 3, stays fully in place. Any person who regularly uses any controlled substance, including marijuana, can be banned from owning a firearm under federal law. This is the outcome gun rights advocates are most worried about. Second, the court could rule narrowly and say the law only applies when someone is actually impaired at the time they possess a gun. This would be a partial win for gun owners. It would mean occasional or past drug use doesn't automatically eliminate your Second Amendment rights. Third, the court could strike down the law entirely as applied to Hemani's situation. This would be a major win for gun rights. It would send a clear signal that the government needs more than just drug use to permanently disarm someone. Most legal experts watching the court's recent history believe a narrow ruling in the middle is the most likely outcome. The court has been careful in recent Second Amendment decisions. They ruled in United States versus Rahimi in 2024 that someone found by a court to pose a real threat to another person's safety can be temporarily disarmed. That ruling was specific and narrow. Hemani's case will likely follow the same pattern. The court will probably try to define exactly when drug use crosses the line into making someone too dangerous to possess a firearm. But here's why you still need to pay attention even if the ruling seems narrow. The details on how the Supreme Court writes its decision will matter enormously for how lower courts apply the ruling. If the court says something like, a person must be shown to be dangerous due to their drug use, every future case will be measured against that standard. Gun owners who use marijuana, even in legal states, will be watching this very carefully. And remember, this decision is also tied to the home search question. If the court makes it easier for the government to justify disarming drug users, that gives prosecutors and law enforcement more power to seek warrants targeting homes where they believe both guns and drugs are present. That affects your Fourth Amendment rights too, your protection against unreasonable searches. These two constitutional issues are deeply connected in this case. This information could directly affect your rights before this summer ends. The Supreme Court's decision in United States versus Hemani is coming down by late June 2026. Once that ruling drops, gun laws across the country could shift almost overnight. Subscribe right now because my very next video is going to break down exactly what that ruling says and what you need to do immediately after it comes out. You do not want to miss that one. Let me wrap this up for you. The Supreme Court is deciding a case right now that touches both your right to own a firearm and the government's power to search your home. It started with one FBI search in Texas, but its impact could reach every gun owner in America. If you use marijuana, even legally under your state's law, your federal gun rights could be at stake. If you want to understand what this ruling means the moment it drops, you need to stay plugged in. Subscribe to this channel right now. Not for me, for yourself. Because the people who know about these rulings before they take full effect are the ones who can protect themselves. The people who don't find out until it's too late are the ones who end up in legal trouble for something they didn't even know was illegal. Don't be that person. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next video. One final note. Everything discussed in this video is for educational purposes only. Gun laws are complex and vary by state and circumstance. Nothing here is legal advice. If you have a specific situation involving firearms and the law, please speak with a licensed attorney in your state.